Okay, in this video, I'm gonna be putting together a DIY-able rainwater collection system here on my outdoor kitchen space. You can actually get into a system very inexpensively. So I have 3 55-gallon drums here that I plan for the backside and 2 65-gallon ones that are a little bit more decorative on the front side. So let me show you the simple steps that I'm gonna take in order to start collecting rain that I'm gonna be catching off of this roof. First, why did I want rainwater collection? One, I think it's awesome to collect the water and then repurpose it. But two, it also would have been very expensive in my rocky terrain to get water from my house over to this sink. So collecting, then using rainwater to wash dishes and hands is perfect and cheap comparatively. It is worth mentioning that this isn't gonna be potable, meaning I won't be able to drink it. But that's why this space is gonna have too many fridges. Let me start off by showing you the overall system, then I'll get into the details on putting it together. First, there are going to be gutters to catch the rain off the roof, then to the downspouts to direct them into the holding tanks. Since I had new gutters installed, I got to pick the placement of my downspouts and situated them center to the fireplace, which is what I plan to use to hide the rain barrels in back. On the front, I placed them center on the 2 posts. For the holding tanks, you can use any number you want. These 55-gallon drums are about $10 each, but know that there is a huge variety of collection tanks you can pick from. But the method of the system is the same. You join the barrels together, you create a way to access the water, such as a spigot, or in my case, I'll have a line that connects it to my sink. Then you can create an overflow line to direct additional water away. Gravity will be used to collect all of the water in the holding tanks. But since my sink is higher than my barrels and water won't travel uphill without cause, I put in a pump. I spent a lot of time walking around the store finding all the pieces to make this system work, and I have a link for you down below everything I've used. To haul it home, I've used the drawers in my deck system for all of the bagged items, then the flat deck portion for the lengths of pipe. The 2 adjustable rails make tying down anything super quick and easy. Now, my ground is on a slope, so I started my project by cutting down a 2x6 and building a platform for my barrels to sit on. Since these will be in the weather and close to the ground, I use treated boards. When marking out the location for the platform supports, I use this awesome new to me, speed square from Crescent. I typically mark one board, then use the square to transfer the location to both at the same time. But a typical 6-inch square can't span both. The Crescent square has an additional 6-inch flip out that expands the straight edge. It has tiny bearings to keep it in place when you don't need it, but then a cutout on the backside so that you can easily flip it out when you do. I think that's brilliant. So I used the square to mark the locations, then assembled the platform quickly with the nailer. I grabbed some paving stones to raise up the lower end of the platform and leveled it as best as possible. By the way, I made my platform longer than needed so that I can easily add more barrels to the system in the future. The important part right now is that 2 barrels are directly under the 2 downspouts in the gutter so that the rain can fall straight into the inlet. So a trick that you can do is grab a long level and hold it up to it to see, is it inline or is it just deceiving you? And that looks pretty good. So now I can hold this in place, trace it, and then trace it and cut a hole for it. You can use a lot of things for inlets, but I picked up a simple grate that is about 6 inches in diameter. After punching a starting hole, I finished making the cut with my Triton jigsaw. To keep the water as clean as possible, it's best to add a filter to this inlet. I did this by buying a few paint strainers and wrapping it around my grate. This is going to prevent leaves, dirt, and bugs from getting into the water. On that note, I also bought some gutter guards to place in the gutters themselves. These are expandable mesh caps that will block leaves from going through the downspouts. Alright, now to join the barrels together. I find it best to lay it on its side. It doesn't matter where you join them, but I chose to make this connection near the bottom. The hole size is determined by the fitting size, and the fitting size is determined by the size of PVC you want to use. For my system, I'm using 4 inches on the downspouts, 2 inches for all the inlet and outlet plumbing, then 3/4 in between. 2 inches actually might be better here, but the fittings were hard to find and expensive. So that's why I bumped it down to 3/4 where I thought I could. The fitting you need is very specific. It's called a bulkhead fitting. These bulkhead fittings are really cool. Not only do they have a washer, making, if you have to punch a hole in something that's going to contain water, makes it pretty darn watertight. But another cool feature is the threads are all left-handed. This way, whenever you get part A inside of the barrel, you can tighten down on the nut, which actually tightens down on the fitting without having to hold on to the part inside. Since I couldn't reach an arm end to place the fitting, a trick is to use something to bridge the gap. A straight stick would work, but I didn't have one, so I used a length of Romex. This gets the fitting close, then I used my fingers to work it in to secure the nut. And I only hand tighten these down. Once repeated on both, now the barrels can be joined together with some fittings. And again, I'll link to all the fittings I used in the description. When joining in my third barrel, I left a space so I wouldn't block my transformer. This space will also allow me to add in a shutoff valve feature. Kind of an upgrade option that you can do is put in a ball valve in between either every single barrel or a collection of barrels. So I'm going to put one in between these two, and what this will do is allow me the option to completely shut off that side or this side and have access to work on one without emptying the rest, if that makes sense. Real quick, I want to pause and thank this video sponsor, which is Policy Genius. If you have family, you need life insurance, but buying it can be complicated. So Policy Genius started a company to reinvent the process from start to finish. I've seen my parents and grandparents benefit from life insurance, allowing them to withstand the cost of funerals and mortgages. I want to make sure that my family is protected in the event that something happened to me. Policy Genius makes it easy to compare quotes from over a dozen top insurers all in one place. Just head over to policygenius.com/April to get started, and in minutes, you can work out how much coverage you need and compare personalized quotes to find your best price. You could save 50% or more on life insurance by comparing quotes with Policy Genius. When you're ready to apply, their team will handle the paperwork and scheduling for free. Since the licensed experts work for you and not the insurance companies, you can trust them to offer unbiased advice. You could save $1,300 or more per year by using Policy Genius to compare life insurance policies. If you're interested, head over to policygenius.com/April to simplify insurance and start comparing quotes. When assembling, I definitely recommend doing a dry test fit before gluing anything together. I got my entire system figured out before I came back and primed, then glued my parts together. If you do this, don't skip the purple priming step. It softens the PVC, so when you add the glue, it bonds the material on a molecular level. I also use Teflon tape on all of the threads. I actually have some work left to do on the last barrel, so I didn't do the gluing to fully join it into the system yet, but we'll get to that later. Next, I cut in an inlet hole that I'll use to join the collected water from the front barrels to these back barrels. And this is where I up the size to 2 inches. So now I need to get this fitting into that hole down there, but the access holes are too small for this. So I'm just gonna cut a 4-inch hole right in the center as an access hole for me to get this all the way down to the bottom. This placement of the inlet doesn't matter. I placed mine near the bottom though, because I'll later use the top for something else. I ended this line with an elbow facing the front of the deck to tie into the 2 front barrels. And I'll also get to that later. Next, I moved to the bottom of the barrel because that's where I decided to place the outlet hole that the sink will use to pull water from. I placed this on the bottom so that it will be able to use 100% of the collected water. This line I bumped down to 1/2 inch because that was determined by the sink's line. And I also switched over using plastic PEX fittings for the entirety of this line. I came off the bottom of the barrel with a long enough straightaway so that when I flipped the barrel back upright, this line would extend to the bottom of my wooden platform, then elbow over to the underside of the deck. With that done, I can now connect this barrel to the rest of the system. Then plumb in a pump and a few other features. So I'm actually going to mount this underneath here, but once I get under there, it's going to be way too complicated and tight for you to see what's happening. So let me quickly explain. So from the bottom of the last barrel here, it's going to go into a shutoff valve here. And because now we need to get into a pump, this pump is going to allow me to push water back uphill to the sink or to this like hose bib or anywhere else. By incorporating a shutoff valve here, it'll allow me to separate this pump should I ever need to work on it, because it's definitely going to need to get replaced in the future. So this shutoff valve is going to go into here, elbow. I'm going to mount it to the underside of the deck, and then this line is going to go off to the sink, and then this line is going to go to the hose bib. You just need to make sure that the pump is in your system's line before anything that needs pressure, such as your faucet and the hose bib. So everything on this side of the pump won't have pressure. It'll just be relying on gravity, and then everything on this side will have the pressure that the pump is going to supply you. I secured the pump to the bottom side of the deck with a few screws. Then the line coming from the bottom of that last barrel can be connected to the inlet side of this pump. Then on the outlet side can be ran over to the sink. And I mentioned a hose. This is just an upgrade feature that I put into my system. I think it would be really handy to have a hose to clean off my deck. And to place one in the system, I used a hole saw to punch a hole into the fascia. By the way, check out this awesome Diablo hole saw mandrel I just discovered. Ah, that's so neat. You know, typical hole saws, you have this nut that you have to back off, then you're able to pull this back and you're able to replace this. However, look at this Diablo one. They made it to where it has the collet bit to where it's literally that simple to replace it and put it right back on. Then, if your bit breaks or gets dull, you can also take it out and replace it without having to buy a new one of these. Tell me that's not awesome. After punching a hole to fit the spigot, I could attach a few PEX fittings to tie it into the system. Note, I could have placed this anywhere. I just chose this spot because it's hidden from view, but accessible and easy to tie in. There's actually a few more things to install back here, but I'm gonna go ahead and pause there, jump over to the front system and show you how those are tied in. For the front, I went with prettier containers since these will be visible, but you could use the same 55-gallon drums to achieve the same results. These have a large opening pre-made in the top with a built-in grate for filtering. I started the step off by moving in some pavers to set the barrels on top of. The inlet will be on top, then the outlet will be at the very bottom. Again, to use 100% of the capacity. However, the shape of the bottom of the barrel made me go a little bit different of a direction on these two. With this concave surface, the nut it doesn't have enough room to suck down on that gasket. So I'm actually gonna flip this and put the nut on the inside. So by doing it this way, you can see how much nicer that seats. Now, the tricky part is just getting on the inside to put the nut on. I'm going in.
Good luck.
Hold on. Okay, maybe this. No. It might have to be you.
Oh no. I don't know if I can fit. Oh, it's so close. Ow.
No?
Maybe I can do it with my toes.
Going in.
Are you holding it? Or is it spinning?
No, I'm holding it.
Okay. Okay, I think that's good. It looks like it's seated nicely. Oh, and we also have to do this on the other one. Do I have the best team or what? The biggest thing to pay attention to here is where your containers sit in relation to the other containers. This might get confusing, but just remember that water is going to seek out the lowest open point in the system. So you need to make sure that that lowest open point is your overflow. This way, all the barrels are going to fill up together. Then the excess water is going to go out through the overflow only. With that, I needed to raise this front barrel up high enough so that the opening in the top was at least higher than the overflow in the back system. All right, now that the barrels have their heights and their outlets figured out, now is all the collective plumbing, which looks like this. Okay, so now rain is gonna come in from there down into the top. On the bottom side, where I put in that bulkhead, it's gonna 90 over. Ideally, this would have gone all the way back under the deck. However, this rock was messing it up. So as you can see here, I'm instead gonna run it this way, paint this to camouflage it, and then I 90 over as soon as I can under the deck. This will be mounted to the underside. We're gonna run the water this way, join it together with a coupler for the straightaways, go into a T-fitting, which will come in and feed the other barrel of the same style, and then go all the way back to the main collection in the back of the unit. But of course, all of this will be underneath the deck. So now the front two barrels are connected, go into the T, then it runs all the way back to the back system. And then going all the way to the Now before, I had left an elbow here to connect the front to the back. However, I wanted a way to drain the entire system and decided to change this elbow for a T-fitting. This way I can include a ball valve here and give myself a way to drain the entire system, which they say you should do about once a year. This way, this will run out and drain the system with all the water going downhill. Now that the front system is connected to the back system, I now have a way to collect, I now have a way to drain. The last thing is to put in an overflow. Once all 5 barrels in the system get full, I need a way to direct excess water so that it just doesn't mound up over the top. You want this somewhere up high on the barrels. So I came off the very last barrel in my system and put the hole as high as I could put a fitting in. Now it's just a simple matter of directing that water off somewhere. In my case, I ran it down towards the slopey ground for it to run off and water trees. Oh, and it was actually brought to my attention, which was a silly oversight for me, not thinking of it before. If sunlight can access the water, then you're gonna have an algae problem. So if you're gonna be buying barrels, and I definitely recommend buying either the black or the blue kind, but in my case, since I bought the clear, simply gave them a coat of black paint. Now I need to install the downspouts. I saved installing these for last so that I could first have this whole backside finished. On the back, this was as simple as putting the 2 PVCs up into place and using screws to attach it to the downspouts. However, on the front, I didn't want to have this big bulky PVC coming down from the fascia onto the post and into the rain barrel. So I'm going to be utilizing rain chains instead. You could very simply use any sort of chain, but since this is a popular item, there are plenty of decorative options on the market. Okay, and I think that's it. So now that everything's in, let's go over the entire system. The gutter is gonna catch the rain. The downspouts, or the rain chains in front, are gonna move the water down into the barrels. The barrels are all connected either through PVC pipe underneath the deck or through smaller PVC in between each barrel, to where I'm gonna have a total of 295 gallons that I'm gonna be able to store. I have a way to drain the entire system should I need to. Then I also have an overflow that's gonna dump the excess water once all of the rain barrels are full. What I like is that you can get started very simply by just adding a few barrels here and there. And then you could always increase it if you need to. But in the meantime, 300 gallons is gonna be plenty in order to wash dishes, wash hands, and maybe rinse off the deck now and then. So I really hope that this video has helped you out. I know that this is a topic that is very, at least to me, fascinating. So I really hope that I've been able to shorten your learning curve and inspire you to possibly start your own. Of course, I have a rainwater collection video to where I installed a 30,000 gallon tank that I use for irrigation around my shop and garden. So be sure to check that one out if you're looking for a much larger system. I've linked everything I've used down in the description below, and I'll see you on the next video. If you're interested in building a garden, don't forget that I have a set of plans showing you how to build a raised garden with an enclosed fence around it. The plans show you how to build 1 box so that you can build 1 or 10 like I did. You can click here for plans and here to subscribe to the channel.